There, welcome back to coverage here at Mythic Championship IV from Barcelona. That's Paul Chiano, Marshall Sutcliffe. It kind of had to come to this.
Not a big surprise.
Right, I mean, it is and it isn't. None of the players were happy with their decks. Specifically, our two featured drafters, Márcio Carvalho and Paul Rietzl. Yeah, they're going to meet in the finals. So, turns out when you've got two epic, in Paul Rietzl's case, Hall of Fame level player, they're gonna find their way.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's kind of what happened for them in this draft. They're not really working with a ton of synergies here, but both players still drafted kind of your standard solid draft deck. They have good mana curves, right? And they can just get those aggressive draws, and their decks also have a lot of play to them, allowing them to kind of maneuver games and kind of outplay their opponents, which is kind of what we saw over the course of rounds 1 and 2.
Yeah, I think that the setup here, Paul, for this particular matchup is I believe that Márcio's deck is stronger. I also believe that his deck is better the longer the game goes. He has a lot of opportunities to pick up value, and he has kind of the big haymaker of the two, where Paul doesn't really have anything to completely lock up a game. Márcio does with Winds of Abandon. So I think we're going to see Reitzel be very aggressive here. I think he's going to try to steal some games and pick up the 3-0 to start off his tournament, where if the game goes for a little while, I think that you'll see Márcio Carvalho pull into the lead.
Yeah, Winds of Abandon is just absolutely backbreaking in any matchup. And we have yet to see him cast it, but still sitting here at 2-0.
He sees a land and a Segovian Angel off of this Fairy Seer, decides he doesn't want it, as he's already got another one. Two low-impact cards. The land, of course, is just you either need it or you don't. But the Segovian Angel on top of a Fairy Seer. Look, if your opening hand has 3 1/1 flyers for 1, you're not really in good shape. You may feel like, well, I've cast some stuff, I did some things, but you actually haven't really affected the board in a meaningful way. Paul's going to attack in there with that Watcher, and it's going to be immediately traded off there from Márcio. He's going to go ahead and block, giving Paul access to the card that was underneath it. And wow, a Lava Dart is going to clear the way here as well.
Yeah, Lava Dart. A lot of great targets here against Márcio with the multiple Segovian Angels and that Fairy Seer that you see. Ooh, look at this.
Here it is, Bizarre Trade Mage hitting the battlefield. Paul actually had a chance to take this card,
but actually chose to take Mana War over it.
I talked to him about it, and I asked him how close that pick was, and he said he had some ideas of trying to kind of go crazy with the Bizarre Trade Mage. Maybe there would be some synergies or some things that he could do, but ultimately he feels that Mana War is just a better card than Trade Mage, and he didn't feel desperate enough to have to do something kind of crazy, so he took the better card.
Yeah. Also in the head-to-head, Mana War is very, very effective against the Trade Mage, right? Because you play the Trade Mage, you're down a card, right? Draw 2, discard 3. Then you get that bounce, and that feels horrible.
Oof. And this is tough because you see the downside here. Carvalho just had to discard a Plains, even though he has in his hand an irregular cohort. He will not be able to cast that without the help of a Plains, though he has found a nice target for Mana War, it seems. And yeah, there's another, another island off the top of the battlefield. But here's the good news. He did make a 3/4 flying. So he's going to start battling with the Trade Mage, sending back that Ravenous Giant. And it looks like a mana situation here for both of our players. Another island in hand here for Reitzel. Says he gets to keep playing stuff, but he actually has a decent chance to take over the late game with what he has. He just has a Factor Fiction in hand now.
Yeah, and it looks like Paul's got a Mana War here for the Trade Mage if he wants. I mean, he can have a nice clean turn here to completely clean up the board if he chooses to go with Mana War, bounce the Trade Mage, and then use Fireball to get that Mana War off the battlefield. Because,
I would do it.
Because, he can, on the other hand, just run out the Giant again. But if Márcio has another way to deal with that Giant, get it off the board, that's a huge tempo swing.
Totally, and he could fall behind. So he's going to take this line. Also, one of the things that you'll see Paul doing here is he's killing everything that Márcio is doing, even some cards of not huge consequence like the Segovian Angel. He is trying to minimize the power of Knight of Old Benalia that's currently on suspend.
Yeah.
If it comes down by itself, it's like, fine, you can deal with that. It's when he has 4 or 5 other creatures that it gets bad. Did he find a Plains? Oh, he did.
So it looks like he's probably going to run out the cohorts here now, given that the Knight of Benalia is going to come into play next turn, pumping both of the cohorts into 3/3s.
Seems good, as we say in the business. Now, one of the things that could happen here, though, is that Márcio also can look over and see that Firebolt could take out half of this if Paul wants. But still, a fine position here for Carvalho.
Yeah. But But one card that's extremely effective against suspend creatures, Exclude. And it looks like Paul does have the Exclude in hand. And it's not like Márcio can play around it. We're going to see that Knight of Old Benalia entering the battlefield or being cast.
This is dirty, and you know, he knows. He put it on the stack. He didn't assume that it was going to resolve, and there's Exclude taking care of it. You know, in sports you call that telegraphing your pass, when you let everybody know what you're about to do. Well, Suspend does that.
Yeah, playing face up, basically.
So Paul getting full value there, really just keeping the board at bay. There's going to be an attack here, and it looks like Márcio says, I want to attack. And Paul's going to go ahead and use Phantasmal Form as a combat trick.
Yeah, gave the Man-O-War +1/+1, and you can draw a card here. So
Márcio considering reacting here.
Yeah.
Or he's just pump faking, right?
Right, even if he doesn't have anything, just kind of...
No, he's considering the Moonblade Shinobi.
Right.
Yeah. He would have to kill his Shapeshifter. This was really important, by the way, that Reitzel blocked the irregular cohort and not the token for many reasons. That's one of them, is that it would punish something like ninjutsu.
Oh, this was actually a great
he got
trade
a Smoke
mage.
Shroud?
Yeah, he got to draw 2, throw away some lands, and got a Smoke Shroud, and he does have that Shinobi in hand, so he will be able to get that Smoke Shroud back.
Yeah, he may just cast the Shinobi.
Yeah.
Returning the trade mage.
You don't want to return the Changeling, you don't want to return the token or the trade mage, really, so yeah, that would make sense.
I mean, I guess if you're out of cards, the trade mage is fine.
Right, you're just kind of milling the top 2 cards of your library then.
Yeah. But of course, that is one of the big payoffs to the Bazaar trade mage, is the fact that it has a good rate.
Yep.
Right? It's a 3/4 flyer for 3. That is something that you would pay commonly 5 mana for, maybe 4, depending on the rarity. All right, here's Ravenous Giant to hit the battlefield again for Reitzel. He's left back Man-O-War as well. Perhaps picking up a little bit of a tell there from Márcio by the way that he paused on that last attack step. In the meantime, though, yeah, he's just going to go ahead and run out the Moonblade Shinobi. Again, I think his thinking is...
Oh, no, it looks... Sorry, yeah, right. He's ninjutsuing.
That's right. Because I think his thinking is, what we were saying, is that he'll probably just be able to empty out his hand anyway.
Yep.
His last card in hand is a Stirring Address.
Yeah, and the Smoke Shroud was so big because now the Shinobi is out of the Firebolt range. Now Paul, I mean, he can kill it though. He has to go Firebolt and Flashback Lava Dart to get that Shinobi.
He's going to have to do that, and guess what? Stirring Address is going to be a blowout.
Right.
Wow. This is nicely set up by Carvalho. What a sweet game so far. In the meantime, Reitzel's just going to jam with both. Is he forced to just make this play, though? It feels like it.
Yeah, I think he has to go for it here.
Oh, well, we're just going to see that happen. Maybe I missaw the card. Is that?
Yeah, Stirring Address, 2 mana.
Oh, he only had one mana left.
Right,
okay, thank you. All right, so that actually works out beautifully.
Oh, that was also a solid draw here. Rock's Veteran.
Yeah, not bad.
Márcio.
But the fact that Reitzel was able to get that Moonblade Shinobi off the battlefield was just huge.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, he's way ahead on board. Reitzel's going to take a quick look at the graveyard here before deciding how he wants to block, or if he wants to block, and he is. Márcio's operating a bit of a deficit here, thanks to casting that Bazaar Trade Mage twice this game already. The third time he casts it, he likely will just empty out his hand.
Yeah, curious to see what he does here. He does need to find an answer to that Ravenous Giant. It is taking away giant chunks of his life total away. He might run out the Trade Mage if he does want to find something like a Winds of Abandon. He can draw 2 and discard everything else, but it looks like he's going to go with the Veteran here instead. And try to race. I mean, the Giant is eating up a point of Paul's life total every single turn.
This is huge, though. Fact or Fiction now for Reitzel. Let's see what he can find. All right. He's got some stuff here.
Yeah, we got Goblin War Party, 3 lands, and a Bogarden Dragonheart.
Yeah, so he's likely to get a spell and a land here.
Right. I imagine, the thing you want to do is put War Party with less lands because you don't want that to be entwined. So something like Goblin War Party plus an island, and then the Dragonheart with 2 mountains. Something like that would make sense. That also prevents Paul from entwining the Goblin War Party if he does choose that pile because he only has 1 mountain in play.
Good old Foff, putting players to the test for years.
Yeah. Probably one of the harder things to do in Magic is making correct splits on fact or fiction.
Yeah, you want to see some professional players argue.
Yeah.
See, how would you split this? It looks like he actually decided just to keep the Goblin War Party away and gave him all 3 lands plus the Dragonheart.
Man, Paul with just 2 fact or fictions for 4.
Just
wow.
Doing it right. And now it gets interesting again because Reitzel has to try to figure out, well, what does that mean?
Yeah, Márcio, if he's able to tap things down, I mean, the Rocks Veteran plus the Illusion token means he can attack for 4. Oh, okay, this is aggressive here.
Yeah, very aggressive. Reitzel says, all right, you want to fight? Let's fight. And he's going to go ahead and play the Bogarden Dragonheart, sacrifice the Manowar, and crash in there for 9 points of damage. And really putting him to the test. What did he hit?
That was a huge draw. That was a Winter's Rest from Márcio. So he can
perfect answer for that Ravenous Giant.
Right, so now he can put it on the Ravenous Giant. Of course, Paul can sacrifice it to the Dragon Speaker, but Paul now, at least has the Illusion token to block the Dragonheart, and can at least try to stay in this game. He can also use it to tap down the Dragonheart and allow the Giant to eat away at Paul's life total, and then just continue to put chump blockers onto the battlefield.
Yeah, the Dragonheart giving Reitzel that insurance plan of getting rid of the Giant means that he won't lose to it.
Right.
But if he is forced to sacrifice it for some reason, that could be a big enough setback that he'll just lose to whatever Márcio comes up with.
And keep in mind, the Dragonheart says sacrifice another creature. You cannot sacrifice itself.
That is correct.
All right. So this is big. What is Márcio going to do with the Winter's Rest?
Reitzel by now will have figured out what it is that Márcio has, and he is going to put it on the Dragonheart.
And Márcio can actually double block and use the Stirring Address to get that Giant off the battlefield, because since he's not in a position to win here, he can actually get Paul here. Assuming Paul has nothing else, he can actually double block with the 2/4 and the 1/1, and then use the Stirring Address to pump the Veteran and get that Giant off the battlefield.
Now, does a Viashino Sand Sprinter change anything here? It is lethal.
Yes,
on its own.
It definitely does.
So not a bad draw?
not the worst.
Now all of a sudden Márcio does not have a double block available, as he is facing down 2 separate lethal threats and is going to have to throw a chump block and a regular block. Now he is going to use it on the Veteran to save it from death, but this is not a good turn of events here for Márcio Carvalho. A nice draw step there from Reitzel, his deck kind of cooperating at this point.
Oh, and that is big. Just another threat to have on the battlefield. So Márcio needs a really big draw here.
Yeah, and that's guaranteed 2 damage also. And it's a land off the top of the library, not what he wanted to see.
Probably playing the land.
Play the land first and then...
Wait.
All right, he just has to discard all of those. A little weird, I guess. Okay. And then he's going to pass the turn back, but he is not looking good here.
And yeah, Márcio cannot double block the Giant here, because if he takes the 3, then Paul can then sacrifice the Hellraiser from the Dragonheart and deal the final few points of damage.
That's right. Yeah, just having that damage kind of locked up is going to prove very problematic here for Márcio.
Wow, and that's a Phantasmal Form from Paul.
But he's decided, you know what, I can just attack here.
Right.
Either way, something's going to get eaten up by the Giant, and then the 2 damage is guaranteed.
Yep. So Márcio basically will, if anything, if he's mindful of that Phantasmal form, he will put the Trade Mage in front of the Hellraiser.
That's
here.
right. That's important because that extra point of toughness that it would have granted could have had it survive the Rocks Veteran. That actually mattered. So here's Phantasmal form.
Oh, and look at this, targeting Márcio's creature.
Smart. So now they're both 3/3s, so there will be a trade, but it leaves Márcio with no battlefield, no cards in hand, and at 2 life facing down a 5/5, and that's going to be game number 1 going to Paul Rietzl. So very nice. He was able to kind of hit that middle ground. And, you know, he did find, I mentioned earlier that I felt like if the game went longer, that Márcio would have the advantage. But this one played out in a very different way because Márcio ended up playing that bizarre Trade Mage twice, which really took away a lot of his options later as far as hitting land drops or having the big power. And Reitzel drew his big mid to late game hammer, Fuff.
Yeah, I mean, Reitzel just generally has, I think, a more robust late game in terms of just, you know, overall power level of the cards that he has. However, we talked about the wins of Abandon. Márcio has yet to see that in the matches that we've played, but if he ever at some point found that card, that could have completely swung it on its head.
That would have thrown it right back. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break. When we come back, though, we'll have more live action here from Barcelona. Don't go anywhere.
I would go to tournaments and I'd see people do all this bridge shuffling and all this other stuff, and I wanted to be like the pros, right? You want to shuffle like they do.
I remember just locking myself in a room and shuffling my cards until I could do the bridge.
Normally when I shuffle somebody's deck, I usually pick it up and then I usually like to get a couple of corner riffles in here.
I'm a terrible shuffler in general, so I'm just going to say, to make your terrible shuffling look better, make sure you got good sleeves.
One thing that always surprises people is you don't have to look anymore. You just look at your opponent, stare them down, and you do some tricks.
This is an advanced move. You don't want to try this without some practice, but you cut it like that in the air.
Air cut.
I shuffle in a very boring fashion, just like cut it in half, and then like get it to overlap and push it back together.
I feel like I'm bending the cards.
It's all right, it's all right.
It didn't even happen.
I have a rather intense bridge in my riffle here, and people often complain.
If you want to really show that you master the card technique, you do the accordion. And I've been training for a long time. Do something like this, and they all fall apart.
And welcome back to the booth here in Barcelona. We're here for Mythic Championship IV, Marshall Sutcliffe. That's Paul Cheon. And we're wrapping up day 1 of the booster draft portion here. This is our third and final one from our feature pod. And I guess not surprisingly, we see the 2 best players in the pod, Márcio Carvalho and Paul Rietzl, facing off.
Yeah, and they had a close game 1.
Yep.
But Paul ultimately kind of pulling ahead on cards with that fact or fiction with 4 cards. I feel so bad whenever I split FOF piles that way, but you know, I just assumed that it was the correct thing given that it was Márcio doing the splitting there under fact or fiction. But Paul got to dig deeper, and you know, Márcio just was you know, falling further and further behind on cards because of the multiple bizarre trade mages that he played over the course of that game.
That's right. The other thing that we shouldn't overlook, it happened a little earlier in the game, but Paul did draw 2 key cards against him. He drew Firebolt and he drew the Lava Dart.
Yeah.
You know, when he was able to leverage those to get multiple creatures off the battlefield, in this case it was 3 that he was able to kill with it.
Yeah,
and that's just really great against Márcio's strategy.
Yeah. Firebolt is fantastic in this format. I mean, Firebolt's always good, but I think it is just one of the stronger uncommons in the set because there's so many of these cheap creatures that have to be dealt with. You're playing against a Sliver deck, it's great. You're playing against a Ninja deck. I mean, it just buys you so much time.
All right, let's get underway here in game number 2. Once again, we have Knight of Old Benalia going on the old suspend train here, and it looks like Márcio is actually going to be able to lead off with the Mariner here.
A nice
Paul's
card.
like, sweet.
nice card
work.
that you might expect to see in the modern portion of the tournament here.
Yeah, I saw a few of the humans decks are running a couple of those now. And it is, in fact, a human as well, and just makes things annoying. And, in fact, could be quite annoying for Reitzel here if he does draw those burn spells that we talked about as they target multiple times, and there's quite a tax there. In the meantime, Reitzel has run out Orcish Hellraiser and paid the echo cost for it. It's facing down an Enduring Sliver in addition to the Unsettled Mariner. In the meantime, though, Reitzel's just like, jam.
Well, yeah.
Trades. who wants to trade, and nobody in this case. So it's going to be Watcher for Tomorrow from Paul Rietzl as the follow-up. So you mentioned it earlier. In fact, I mentioned it earlier too, but this is kind of what he had planned out with having enough 2-drops for the multiple Orcish Hellraisers.
Yeah, when you do play Hellraisers, you just want to kind of stack up more 2-drops because you don't want to have the natural curve of just like 2, 3, 4, because with the Hellraiser, given that you have to pay the Echo, you want to kind of have less 3s and more 2s to be able to curve out properly.
Unfortunately for Reitzel, this does leave the shields down if Márcio wants to get in for some hits.
Yeah, this is a really nice start here for Márcio. He's got the Knight of Old Benalia coming into play in a couple turns, but he's also got he's got the play on 2, play on 3, and then an irregular cohorts here on 4. Márcio does have an interesting. He actually just drew Moonblade Shinobi.
I see.
So,
but he's going to prioritize using up all of his mana for the cohorts here.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Okay. You know, perhaps trying to look for a window to return the cohorts themselves to his hand.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I think, you know, at least for the players who have played this format a bunch, you are aware of the fact that your opponent can ninjutsu things in. So oftentimes when you want to block, you just want to make sure that you block the cohort and not the 2/2 token that the cohort produces.
That's right. Or the Mana War or any of the other.
Always block the Mana War. Oh my goodness. You cannot live with yourself if they ninjutsu something in with the Mana War.
It basically says
you will
must
also
be
just
blocked.
not be alive.
Yeah. All right. So it looks like Márcio is going to go ahead and trade off. Orcish Hellraiser is going to get blocked by the 2/2 Changeling token. And the follow-up play here, though, for Reitzel is nice. It's Ravenous Giant. Is there an answer for Carvalho is the question, because right now that thing's holding down the fort quite cleanly.
He has a few in his... Oh, wow.
Speak of the devil. Mana War off the top of the library here for Carvalho can send that Giant packing. Still, the Watcher is pretty annoying here. Carvalho probably a little reluctant to have to trade off creatures for it. And currently they all do.
He might just choose to...
He's going to Outlast.
Yeah, he can just choose to Outlast and then save the Mana War for next turn, because he can get in for a big attack with the Knight of Old Benalia coming into play. And look at this, yeah, setting it up, being a little patient here with that Mana War.
Yeah. Yeah, the Mariner is a Changeling, so it counts as a sliver, so it has Outlast thanks to the Enduring Sliver. So he's going to activate that on both of those. In fact, the irregular cohort also fits that description, though he decided that since that's one he may want to return to hand later, if given the opportunity, he'll just put it on the Enduring Sliver itself.
Yeah, and you also just want to protect your creatures with a little more utility. Now Paul can't Firebolt the creatures that have been outlasted.
Reitzel reading Knight of Old Benalia and gets a little smile out of Carvalho.
Yeah, and it feels bad when you have to keep that Ravenous Giant on defense because you want to kind of be ending the game. So it looks like, but Paul does look like he wants to try and race here. Márcio probably just going to take it here. Don't really see himself willing to trade the cohort here with the 2/1.
It's exactly what he said. He just shook his head and said, yeah, man, I'll take it. 7 damage right on the chin. That was great. And a Bladeback Sliver is the follow-up for Reitzel. He also does have Phantasmal Form in hand that he can use maybe for some effect.
Márcio's hand is fantastic.
Mana War, Smoke Shroud, and the Shinobi.
And he even has a little bit of the protection here. The creatures are all gigantic.
Paul almost daring Carvalho to kill him. And I do believe that Márcio will take him up on that offer.
Yeah, I mean, one of the safer routes would be to just attack with everything and then Mana War something back to hand, just so that there is not a good chance for Paul to somehow steal the game. Mana Warring the Giant would kind of help ensure that.
Yeah, it's also, the Giant does represent an extra point of damage.
Right.
If Márcio can get him to 1 and just say go.
Yeah, this is currently an attack for 15
So exactly lethal, but there is the sliver. So is he just going to go for it here, Mana War the sliver?
Yeah, if he Mana Wars the sliver and attacks with everything, Paul has to have... Oh, Paul can have a number of things. We did see that he has a Lava Dart in hand. He can actually cast Lava Dart and flash it back. Because Lava Dart would cost 2, then he would pay the mana from the snow-covered island.
Yep.
And then sacrifice a mountain to kill off the irregular cohort. Oh, no, it can't because everything's been pumped. So
That's
Lava
right.
Dart actually doesn't even kill anything. So this is, I think, just a lethal attack.
Yeah, it's just a question of if Márcio wants to go for it by returning the sliver and just applying the lethal attack. That's what he's going to do, and that should do it. Yeah, nothing with 2 toughness.
Oh,
thanks
is
to
this
the
an
trigger.
attack for 14? This might be an attack for... Okay. It was a lethal attack.
Yeah, it was 15.
Okay.
So Reitzel's going to pack him in, and that is game number 2 going to Márcio Carvalho. So here in pod number 1, 2 scrappy decks with an S there going at it, and they are going to go to a game 3 to see who's going to emerge victorious from this pod. Again, there's a little bit of justice here, right? The 2 air quote best players in the pod fighting it out and heading over to game number 3. In the meantime, it looks like we've got Shuhei Nakamura and Martin Mueller.
This is a match too.
Yeah.
I know Martin recently was interviewed and he was very happy with his deck and he expected a 3-0, which is very rare. You often don't hear that from among the top players. Like, you know what? I'm kind of expecting a 3-0 from this. So very, very happy with the way his deck turned out.
I'm sure he's not super thrilled to have to sit across from the Hall of Famer.
Right.
Number 1 pro points all time.
All time.
Shuhei Nakamura. The grinder's grinder.
Oh yeah, Shuhei known to just travel all around the world. Handful of professional players back in the day. Shuhei Nakamura and Martin Yuza. And no surprise, they're at the top of the list for lifetime pro points.
That's right. Yeah, true grinders. Both in the Hall of Fame as well.
Right.
Well earned. This is a game 3 between these 2 as well.
And Martin's looking pretty good here. He's got a giant gluttonous slug in play, rank officer, and I think I see a magmatic sinkhole with a bunch of cards in graveyard too. So really liking Martin's spot here.
Feels like Shuhei's going to need a big ninjutsu or something to off of that Fairy Seer to kind of swing the race back in his direction.
Yeah, but that sinkhole just kind of nullifies that.
Exactly, and yeah, he does have it. Ninja of the New Moon, but it's going to be lights out.
Oh yeah, this is devastating here.
Yeah, this is potentially just a game-winning play from Martin Mueller. You can kind of see by the body language too. He does get to, of course, replay the Fairy Seer that he returned to hand. And a couple of lands are going to go to the bottom of the library here for Nakamura. And he's going to pass a turn back with unknown card on top of the library, but can Martin get the job done? He's got Shuhei down to 7.
And he's got an Urza's Rage in hand too. And the rank officer can deal an additional 2 points of damage because there is a creature in Martin Mueller's graveyard.
Wow, tick-tock. He doesn't need to get in for much, does he?
Right.
He could even take the... Sometimes you see the players just sit back at this point and just start activating rank officer and just saying, look, you have to do something.
Yeah, I like this attack. Just attacking with everything. Even though it feels bad to trade a zombie with a persist creature, given that he has so much pressure on the battlefield, Shuhei has really difficult blocks here. And keep in mind, I mean, Martin also has the Urza's Rage that he could use as a potential combat trick to remove one of the creatures.
Of course. Yeah, when your opponent's at 7 and you have a repeatable damage source, you just sort of think, well, I'll just go upstairs with it. But, you know, dominating the board is another way to clean up this game here for Mueller.
Absolutely.
And you can see how important this block is for Shuhei Nakamura as he is deep in the tank.
Oh, yeah.
He plays extremely quickly as well. So when you see a player like Shuhei think about this much, he knows how important this is to the outcome of the game.
And this is just lethal. I mean, he sees it, Urza's Rage and the Drain.
That's right. So it's 3 plus the 3 plus the 2, and that is plenty. So Martin Mueller is going to pick up a win there over the tough opponent, Shuhei Nakamura from Japan, and emerge victorious from his pod. Congratulations to him. A great start to his tournament. Now we're going to shift our focus back to the main match here, as it looks like players are just about ready to go. And we're underway. So this is game 3. This is our last round of draft for the day. We'll be switching over to Modern after this. So for you Modern fans out there, you only have to wait one more round. And there's the Orcish Hellraiser once again for Paul Rietzl, kind of his signature play for this draft. The Segovian Angel's going to chip in for 1 damage for Carvalho. What's his follow-up? Well, it's the Unsettled Mariner. He's going to pass the turn back. Paul Rietzl is going to pay.
I wonder if we're going to see a trade here. 3-2 for the 2-2.
Curious as well. Yeah. You don't want to start taking too many hits from the Hellraiser, but Carvalho's deck also is incentivized to keep a lot of creatures on the battlefield if possible.
Yeah, especially with the Knight of Opinalias and the Stirring Addresses. He just really wants to go wide.
Exactly. Go wide and then pump them all up. And if you start trading off creatures early, you can find those cards in your hand, and they don't really do that much later in the game. So Segovian Angel's going to attack again, and here's a Vesper Lark. Again, no great trades, though, for the Angel. You mentioned that as one of the only targets you can use that Vesper Lark to get back. But unfortunately, the Angel currently isn't trading for anything.
Yeah, so this is actually that Márcio can actually choose to double block here. Block with the Angel and the Vesper Lark, and then the Vesper Lark will get the Angel back and put it into play.
It's just like, what does that give him, right? Like, it's just cool.
Well, I mean, he gets to just prevent some extra damage, right? If he was planning on blocking with the Vesper Lark. Oh, maybe... Does that not work?
To just chump or whatever? No, I guess not.
Oh, I guess
we'll just default to whatever Márcio.
Yeah, I just yeah. From the years of casting, my assumption is, if the MPL players did something, then it's probably me who missed something.
I agree. Yeah. All right, here's Ravenous Giant now for Paul Rietzl. And he's got a couple of these. This is his big follow-up. This is the card that he uses to apply pressure to Márcio to try to get him to start engaging in combat in ways that he doesn't really want to. The Ravenous Giant applying such big pressure, and no 4th land again for Márcio means that Paul Rietzl is starting to edge forward here as he's keeping that big critical 5/5 on the battlefield and gets to start attacking with it.
Yeah, Márcio has a Winter's Rest, but he doesn't have a Snow permanent in play, so he can't actually cast it just yet. He needs to wait till he draws one of his 5 snow lands.
Ugh.
Yeah.
That is rough. So Reitzel, it looks like he's going to go for Lonely Sandbar Cycle, but he also has Factor Fiction in his hand and hasn't played a land yet, so he can still have an option to cast that if he'd like. In the meantime, though, he's going to go ahead and attack with both of his creatures, and Márcio is definitely on the back foot here. He's got a regular cohort in hand, and he'd love to find a 4th land to start casting those. In the meantime, Ravenous Giant takes another big bite out of his life total, and while the shields are down, Reitzel's going to go ahead and fire off Fact or Fiction.
Oh,
what?
The Unsettled Mariner. No, just wondering if the Unsettled Mariner maybe stops that or slows it down.
Yeah, no, it's just stuff that targets their permanents. So
yeah.
He's good, and this is a nice pile here for Paul Rietzl. Manowar, Dragonheart, Thundering Djinn, Viashino Sand Sprinter, and even another land.
Yeah, Thundering Djinn and Manowar are definitely not going to be in the same pile.
Right.
Those are the 2 strongest cards here.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Paul take whatever the 3-card pile is here.
Right.
It depends really how much he values Thundering Djinn, because that is a very tempting pile as well. Also, the land count in hand for Reitzel will be relevant. If that mountain matters to him, then it makes that pick a lot easier. If he's already got more lands, he may just value the 2 better spells.
Yeah.
Though I have to say, Manowar is pretty devastating on this board, just given that Márcio has had such a difficult time finding his lands and that he's under significant pressure from the Giant.
Yeah, and you can see Paul, thinking hard here because, yeah, this was a very good split, and Paul has a pretty tough choice here. I mean, regardless, it's very good for him, but he just wants to make sure because this is one of the most important decisions in this game.
Another bad draw here for Carvalho. It's a Fairy Seer, which can help him set up the lands in the future, but he really needs them now. He can't take his entire turn off to just cast a 1-drop here just to try to set up lands and expect to get away with it. It's another turn of him just falling woefully behind Paul Rietzl here. It is his only reasonable option, though, so he's going to do so. He does have that Stirring Address in hand as well, so he may be able to leverage that to help get rid of the Giant.
And it looks like he's going to find a snow land
2 lands
on top, so
both snow.
That's very big.
So he's going to only keep one of them, not be super greedy here. But yeah, that's going to basically do it for him this turn. Although he is going to go ahead and attack with the unsettled Mariner, given that the it's not blocking anyway.
Right.
Your move.
Yeah, but really just awkward draw here for Márcio. The mana, next turn, even if he finds that Winter's Rest, then he can't play anything else in his hand because his hand has a couple of 4-drops in hand too.
In the meantime, here comes the Ravenous Giant, and Márcio Carvalho sees the writing on the wall and starts chump blocking. He knows he can't start taking huge hits of damage. That Thundering Djinn would clear away the Fairy Seer anyway. Got to get in while the getting's good. So he's going to draw the snow-covered island that he left on top of his library off of that Fairy Seer, and that will give him land number 4, and he has plenty of options with the Irregular Cohort, the Rocks Veteran, but I think most importantly, the Winter's Rest that you mentioned before, Paul. He just needs to deal with at least one of these threats this turn.
Yes. Very curious to see what he decides to go for here.
He's in an incredibly tough position. Paul Rietzl with a good draw, right? I mean, just a good draw. And Márcio Carvalho with, as you put it, an awkward draw. Just
I think he's going to attack with the Mariner here. And if Paul blocks, he gets everything that he wants. Don't think Paul's going to block, but that allows him to get in for 2 points of damage. Although, if his plan is to Winter's Rest the Djinn, then he should just do it now and then get in for 3.
And it looks like it was kind of funny. As you were describing that, you could see each of those things going through Márcio's mind, and he came to the same conclusion you did, Paul. And that's going to get him in for 3 damage before passing the turn back. Add another damage to it thanks to the Ravenous Giant. And Reitzel is down to 8. He is technically behind in the damage race here, but still, he's the one with the 5/5 on the battlefield. And currently facing down just a 1/1 that could even block. And here's the Dragonheart. Now that thing can get fired up as well. He can sacrifice the Thundering Djinn to it, and this produces 9 points of power. Not quite lethal.
Very close.
Probably worth a block here. It's like so rough.
Yep.
Like if this is the second chump block in a row here for Carvalho, and it's hard to figure out how he's going to steal the win here. But he does block with the Segovian Angel on the Giant. This would leave him at 6 life, and that's exactly what's going to happen.
Chump block his way to victory. But now, given that Márcio is down to 6, Paul can now just cast the Phantasmal form, right?
Yep.
To get in for the final 6 points of damage if Márcio doesn't play a flyer or has a removal spell.
Yeah, it is funny. It shrinks down the Giant.
Yeah, but it gives it wings.
Yes, it does. And it, of course, does pump the Dragonheart by 1, so you're only losing 1 power. But critically, it's lethal. That's the key here. And yeah, if that's going to be the play here, Irregular Cohort now for Carvalho, Paul Rietzl could see the writing on the wall and just go for it.
Yeah,
with
and
just one white mana up,
not much
there's
you can
just
do with
nothing,
the planes, right?
Yeah. So I think Rietzl's just going to go for the win here with Phantasmal form. I can't think of anything that actually gets in the way, and he's going for it. 2 3/3 flyers. Carvalho says, sure, you got it, draw your card, and in they come, and that's lethal. Paul Rietzl scraps out a 3-0 with a deck he was very unhappy with. When asked, what do you think about your deck, how, to start off your tournament, he said, let's just say I'm going to make my flight on Sunday.
Yeah,
he was ready to pack it in.
I will say this, though. Paul definitely is one of those players that will kind of downplay his abilities and also his deck. So, when he's unhappy with his deck, it's still probably fine. I mean, I talked about still a good mana curve, has a pair of Mana Wars, has a pair of Ravenous Giants, Factor Fiction, Firebolt. He's got plenty of powerful cards in his deck. Yeah. It's just not the ideal version of a blue-red deck that he had in mind when he drafted.
And again, it was relative to the rest of the table because nobody really had a great deck from the table that we saw. Okay, we've got one more match going in the feature match area, and boy, look at this. 2 old-school vets here. That is John Finkel, the GOAT, on the right-hand side, and he's playing against Raph Levy.
Couple of Hall of Famers.
That's right.
Going at it here.
Both of these gentlemen were involved with the highest levels of Magic from its very inception, way back in the earliest days of the Pro Tour at the time, and they've been with the game and with the highest levels of competitive Magic for the duration.
Absolutely.
John stepped away from the game for a while to kind of get his career and all that kind of stuff going on. Raph, not really. He stuck with it, playing every every Pro Tour Mythic Championship up until he had a child.
Look at these numbers. 103 Mythic Championships played. 768 career pro points.
Which is the most, by the way. So it looks like blue-red in the hands of Johnny Magic as well. On the other side, though, Raf has one of my favorite archetypes for sure, which is the 4-color snow. Maybe even dip into 5 if you're feeling frisky.
Yeah, the mana fixing is just so strong, especially if you're green based, because you have, the Springbloom Druids along with the Crows and Tusker, and of course the Astrolabe, right? You can pretty much get those for free if you're the only snow drafter.
That's right. And they really do help out with the mana at very low cost. So first things first, though, for Levy, he's going to attack with his Pondering Mage. And I have to say, just jumping in kind of, with no real context here, things looking good for Raf. He's got a Pondering Mage. He is attacking. He's ahead on mana and on the board. So John's got some work to do. Of course, it's still John.
Right.
So if anybody can find their way out of it, it would be John Finkel. I believe he's had some mana issues here, even if there was some ramping happening from Levy at some point. It looks like just 4 lands on the table for Finkel, and he's pretty significantly behind as a result.
Also, this blue-red deck is just extremely scary to play against because at any given point, they can just hit you for giant chunks of damage, especially with this Minotaur. So, Raf does have to be a little bit careful once John adds a little more to his board. Now there's 2 Minotaurs in play, so.
Okay. Double Spinehorn Minotaur for John Finkel, passes the turn back. I believe he had a Moonblade Shinobi that he could have ninjutsu'd in, decided against it, preferring to build out his board. But he is taking big hits because once again, Levy's going to hit the red zone here. That's 5 damage. Down to 11 goes John. This is game number 3 between these two veterans. What now, a Frostwalla?
Yeah, I wonder if he's going to also run out this Reprobation here on one of the Minotaur. Nope. Just going to keep up Shelter. Of course, he could have kept up Shelter regardless because of the Astrolabe.
Yep. There's land number 5 finally for John, who has a stacked hand. It looks like he has 7 spells in his hand, Paul, including Thundering Djinn, that he's going to run out right now. Now, this is key. This is what Raphael Levy kept that Reprobation in hand for, because right now that Thundering Djinn would completely dominate this board. John has Reign of Revelation in his hand as well. I mean, this is the type of combo that can just start killing you and killing your creatures at the same time. And Raf, respecting that possibility, is going to have to just run out the Reprobation on the Djinn.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that was smart by Raf, right? It was tempting to just say, well, I'm just going to use this on one of these Minotaurs. I don't want to get kind of randomed out. But yeah, his patience is going to pay off big time here.
Yeah, keep in mind this is game 3 now, so both players very aware of the contents of each other's decks, and Raf recognizing that one of the worst possible cards that John could play would be that turn 5 Djinn.
Raf looks like he's content to attack with the Vesperlark and the Frostwalla, but maybe he's going to leave the Pondering Mage back this time. Yeah, he probably just sees the potential for a disaster, right? If he attacks with it, it's not lethal. 4, 7, 8, 9 at the most. And that would put John to 2, but with 2 double striking Spinehorn Minotaurs, if some type of volatile clause or just something stupid were to happen, he could somehow go from 17 to 0, where if he leaves back the Pondering Mage, that's not the case.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a pump here and then a Shelter. So the Frostwalla is now a 4/4, and then now he's going to use the Astrolabe, funnel the mana, and give it protection from red. So it will just eat the Minotaur and draw Raf a card.
Yeah, and critically, it'll keep the Frostwalla on the battlefield as well. So very nice there from Raf. That's good use of a Shelter. Yeah, he got a card and got rid of one, so you got to love that.
Raf just wondering whether or not he played a land this turn.
I see. He did end up passing the turn. Pyrophobia was the draw step from John. Boy, you got to feel for John as well. Just with those mana stumbles, it left him with, right now, he's got 7 spells in his hand, Paul, and it's just, he just doesn't seem to have enough time to be able to deploy them in a meaningful way. So he's going to go for a Pondering Mage here to try to shore up the ground game a little bit and perhaps find himself another land.
Well, looks like he found a land, but a couple of cards he's probably not a huge fan of here.
Right. Yeah, the Cyclops and another Spinehorn Minotaur.
Yeah, I mean, John has removal spells in hand, but they all deal 3 damage, and Raph's threats both have 4 toughness effectively, you know, with the Frostwalla, access to that snow-covered island that's on the battlefield, along with that Pondering Mage, so.
Yeah, the fact that Pyrophobia is a sorcery becomes very important here, as well as you can't snipe that Frostwalla with the ability on the stack. John is trying to work his way through here to see if there's any way against Raph, though it feels like Raph has just had a better draw than him currently.
Ooh, this is...
Hello.
All right, well, John has drawn an extra card this turn, so the Minotaur does have double strike. So this is an attack for 10 from the Minotaur. So now will Raph choose to take 10 or just chump block with that Pondering Mage?
It is scary, but it is not lethal.
Right.
You know, like, he can certainly afford to just take this hit.
And that's the one thing that's so scary about this. Like, now there's a Reckless Charge in the graveyard too, right?
Right.
If John plays an evasive creature and gives that one, you know, +3/+0 in haste, it could just be over.
So this is another non-lethal attack here. After Raph decided to chump block, he has Wall of 1,000 Cuts in his hand and 2 lands. John, of course, can still block with that Thundering Djinn, even with the Retrobration on. It just shrinks it down and takes away its abilities, not its ability to block. So he's going to throw that under the bus, and then the wall is going to hit the battlefield here for Raph. This is getting kind of interesting.
Yeah. Because
Raph is now well and truly out of gas. He has nothing else going.
And John's hand is still loaded.
Very loaded. Urza's Rage, he's going to draw the Cyclops here that has Cycling if he'd like to. Of course, he knows the next card too, though. It's just another Minotaur.
And keep in mind that he has the Cyclops, which can make the Wall of 1,000 Cuts unable to block if he wants. Question is, does he have enough for lethal? If he cycled and then flashed back the Reckless Charge, that would be an attack for 13, so not quite there.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's a lot closer, though, than Raph is comfortable with.
Definitely.
Guys, if John steals this game.
I mean, I don't think John is in a horrible position anymore,
I know.
given that Raph's out of gas here.
But when we came in, he had 7 spells in hand.
Right.
And Raph was, like, dumping his hand on the board.
So I think, yeah, a lot of different options here. Is that an Igneous Elemental? If it's an Igneous Elemental, then he could run that out and kill the Vesper Lark. Having a 4-power creature in play is nice, too, because you can allow the Igneous Elemental to trade with the Frostwalla.
Yeah, it does look like that's what's in his hand.
Yeah.
Only a couple of minutes left in the round. You can see at the top right part of your screen as well. So keep that in mind.
Is he just using double burn to kill the wall?
Yeah, that's exactly
Wow.
what he's going to do. And he's going to attack with both. He's still not facing lethal.
Wow,
it's
he's
only
putting himself
6
in a
damage.
position to win here. That's, what is that, 5 damage? He didn't draw an extra card this turn, did he?
No.
Yeah. So that's 5, but keep in mind, Raph can only attack for 6 this turn.
That's right.
So that would get John down to 1, and the next turn, John has the combination of the Cyclops plus Reckless Charge, which would be 13 points of damage. So if Raph chooses to attack with everything and play a blocker, John wins the game.
Wow, and look at Raphael Levy. You can see it. He's like, this is not going to go the way I want. Now, what did he draw for the turn is a question.
It is terrifying playing against this blue-red deck because you can just find yourself in situations where you're like, wait, how did I lose this game? What happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it looks like, yeah, Raph only attacking with one of the creatures, firing off the...
Smart.
The monstrosity here.
On Chiller Pillar?
On Chiller Pillar to play around a card like Urza's Rage, instant speed, 3 damage effects.
He's trying to set up for the win next turn.
He cannot pump the Frostwalla this turn, however.
He is completely out of mana. Let's see what happens. John Finkel, we knew what he was going to draw. It was another Spinehorn Minotaur. So the question is, can he piece together a victory here?
Does John have a way to deal with the Chiller Pillar? Because the Chiller Pillar is just a lethal attack, right? I mean, John's at 5.
It is.
It's a 5/5 flyer.
Yeah, he needs to kill Raph now.
Right.
Or delay death by taking care of that Chiller Pillar in some way. Let's take a look at what he's working with. Reign of Revelation.
Oh man! So if he can ninjutsu in the Moonblade Shinobi, that would give him a chump blocker for the Chiller Pillar.
It would.
So what he could do is cycle the Cyclops, so one of the creatures can't block.
Yep.
Then attack, then ninjutsu in the Shinobi.
Yeah, he can make it so the Chiller Pillar is not able to block.
Right, and then the Frostwalla may or may not block.
Yeah, alternatively, if he can line it up, he may be also be able to set up a situation where he forces Raph to block with the Chiller Pillar on like a Spinehorn Minotaur that has 5 power and double strike. I don't know if he has enough mana to do all that.
But that's not a lethal attack, right? So he might just choose to take 10.
Oh, and then just block the
Pondering Mage.
Yeah, you're right. So he cannot do that. Okay. Yeah, the options are limited here for Finkel. But here we go. He's going to go for the Cyclops and say Chiller Pillar can't block. This is finally an unknown card on top of the library here for John as well. And he found a mountain.
Yeah, he has to find a way to deal with that Chiller Pillar because he does not have a lethal attack here. So
maybe he has to rain into String of Disappearances?
I mean, I think the only play is ninjaing in the Shinobi with the attack.
Yeah, and given that Raph's out of cards, that's fairly safe, right? The 1/1 flyer should be able to block the Chiller Pillar. And of course, if Raph rips a removal spell, then you just shake his hand.
Yeah, but not a great situation here for John, choosing which creature to attack with. Now the question for Raph is the only thing John can have here to survive a Shinobi? And if so, should I just chump block with a Frostwalla?
Yeah, well, in this case, it looks like John is considering just attacking with both. So he's guaranteeing this.
Right, but what if Raph doesn't block and just takes everything? Then he just has a lethal attack with everything, unless John has a 2-mana creature to follow up the Shinobi.
Yep, a 2 or 1 mana creature or way to interact. Raph could just take it.
Right. If Raph,
this has been great.
Yeah, if Raph takes it, then he will win this game. Because John currently only has an attack for 7 damage here. But Raph might just be playing may play it conservatively and block the Minotaur in case John has some kind of pump spell here.
That's right. That's exactly what he's thinking.
But then this is good for John because he actually gets to stay alive.
Yes.
There's a lot of levels here.
These are the really tough spots where you have to decide, am I willing to put my match on the line, right? And just say, John, if you've got it, you got it. Good for you. And what are the chances that that happens? And then you have to think of the other side of the coin on, well, what are the chances that I win if he doesn't?
Yeah, it's so hard because John has a hand full of cards.
Yes.
So Raph just has no idea what to play around. It's so difficult, right? John could have any number of things that can just win him the game here. Little does he know that all he needs to do here is just not block, and Chiller Pillar will get it done. Along with the 4/4 attack from the Frost.
He's really thinking it through. Raph, very much aware of what these options mean, and he's trying to think of, well, what are the cards that you could have at this point? Remember, we're in combat. We're talking about instant speed cards that can pump up that Minotaur.
Volatile Claws is probably the card he's most concerned about because that would be lethal. Yep. Volatile Claws would mean that John would be able to attack for 13 points of damage if unblocked.
And you could see it. Raph is verbally walking himself through all of these things to see what the actual outcomes are. And on top of that, how likely it is that they happen, right? The step that you have to take is, okay, I've recognized Volatile Claws as a card I care about. Do I care about it enough to actually play around it? It's not just being aware of it. It's also assessing whether you should or shouldn't.
Yeah, would John actually have Volatile Claws in his deck?
Yeah, exactly. Do I have a reason to think that he has it in his hand?
Right. And it's not an unreasonable card to play in the blue-red deck, right? Because giving your Minotaur trample along with the double strike is a nice 1-2 punch. Okay.
He is going to block.
He is blocking, so John will be able to stay alive here.
Man, and not being able to pump that Frostwalla really hurts here. And there's the Shinobi coming in.
After the first strike damage, because of course it had double strike. And now John has the chump blocker for the Chiller Pillar, so if Raph attacks with everything, it's only 3. So Raph, if he draws a removal spell,
if he can
that will
get
it done.
stupid illusion token out of the way, he can win. John Finkel just cool, calm, collected, going about his business. Raph's down to 7. He's also not dead here.
Right. But keep in mind, there is that reckless charge in John's graveyard.
That's right. Another Vesper Lark off the top of the library here for Levy. Look, it's a blocker.
Yeah.
I wonder if he has any 1-drops to get back. Typically, no.
I don't think so.
Yeah, and Vesper Lark, that's one of the reasons why it's not like one of the key uncommons in the set. But boy, John has a draw step and Rain of Revelation. He drew Spell Snuff, so that's not it. Also, time has been called, it looks like, so we're probably in extra turns at this point. Yeah. Though it does feel like
the game will end.
It'll end anyway.
Soon, one way or another.
Yeah.
I mean, does John have a way to deal with this Chiller Pillar? I mean, Raph just needs to block the Shinobi. And if he blocks the Shinobi, then John cannot create a 1-1
illusion.
And if John plays out the Igneous Elemental in hand, if John plays out the Igneous Elemental in hand, he can deal with one of the Vesper Larks, but not both. Does he need to find something with that Rain of Revelation? Because I don't think he has the tools with the cards that he has in hand.
John has found a way every time.
Oh, he can give it haste. Does that change anything? Nope, he goes with the Rain. So we got to find something here.
He finds an Eye-Kite.
Oh, that was big.
Eye-Kite is a blocker.
That was a huge, huge draw.
And another Reckless Rage as well.
Man, with the second Reckless Rage, I mean, John could potentially kill Raph out of nowhere.
Especially the one that's unknown to Raph, right?
Right.
So scary. Wow, John finds another out here. He has absolutely hung on at every juncture. He needed Raph to do everything Raph has done.
Right.
Just to be able to stay alive. And this is what it's like to watch the best in the world play.
And John also needs to, you know, try to put himself in a position to come back from this. I mean, the Eye-Kite is a little bit. It was a nice draw, but he can't follow it up with another threat, I don't think.
Right. The problem this turn is that the Rain of Revelation ate up 4 of his mana, right? And it's going to leave him with just the Eye-Kite as his play.
Yeah, I mean, I can see John just forcing by attacking with both and seeing what Raph does. Raph certainly will block the Pondering Mage, but he might just choose to take the 3 here.
You mean block the Shinobi?
Sorry, block the Shinobi and take the 3.
Yep. That does seem to be the case, and it looks like Raph kind of had that worked out ahead of time as well, as he just immediately slid that Vesper Lark over in front of the Moonblade Shinobi. He knows the name of the game. He's trying to win with Chiller Pillar. That's what Raph is trying to do. That's what's important. And by making this trade, he prevents John from making that 1-1. But the Eye-Kite, and he's going to double chump.
But I think John is now favored here. Raph needs to find a removal spell for this Eye-Kite. You could see him shaking the head here.
Here we go. This one has slipped away. Does he find a way to get it out of the way? It's an Astrolabe. He gets another peel at it.
Another card.
So let's see what he draws. A removal spell would do it right now.
Oh, it's a removal spell.
Found it. A settled beyond reality off the top of the library for Raph Levy.
He almost turned it around. John almost turned it around.
Unbelievable play from John Finkel to put himself in that position, and he takes that like a gentleman. But my goodness sakes, what a draw there from Levy.
Yeah, I mean, Levy had a few opportunities, but I mean, if you think about it from Levy's side, that is such a hard game to play, right? John has 6 cards in hand. He could have anything. You're playing against the blue-red spells deck, and he took more conservative lines, and he actually absolutely had to find a removal spell there because of the way that he blocked on those previous turns.
Yeah, he committed himself to those chump blocks early. We saw him start to chump block, and he started to really fall behind because John understood he needed to keep that pressure up. And boy, did we save the best for last here, because that was a super sweet match with Raf just scraping it out at the end. That's going to do it for our coverage of Booster Draft here on day one from Barcelona. But you know what that means? We're going to be transitioning over to Modern. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, it'll be time for Modern. Don't go anywhere.